Frederick and Bertha loved spending their afternoons at Grandpa John's farm, exploring the fields and listening to his stories. One breezy afternoon, while picking raspberries near the garden, they spotted something unusual. A giant raspberry. It was the biggest one they had ever seen, gleaming like a ruby in the sunlight. "We have to take this home," Frederick said, eyes wide with excitement. "But how?" "It's too heavy," Bertha pointed out, trying to lift it. Just then, Grandpa John chuckled from his rocking chair. "This reminds me of an old story," he said, "about an ant who found a giant raspberry and learned the power of teamwork. Once upon a time, in a tiny green meadow, Grandpa John began, a little ant named Pip discovered the biggest, juiciest raspberry he had ever seen. He tried to move it by himself, pushing and pulling with all his might. But no matter how hard he worked, the raspberry wouldn't budge. Pip refused to ask for help. "I can do this alone," he insisted. But as the sun set, he was still struggling, exhausted and frustrated. The next morning, his friend Mealy the butterfly fluttered by. "Why don't you ask the other ants for help?" she suggested. Pip hesitated but finally agreed. He called his fellow ants, and together, they worked in perfect harmony, some pushing, some pulling, some guiding. Within minutes, they had the raspberry rolling toward their nest. Pip realized that working together made the impossible possible. Frederick and Bertha looked at each other, inspired. "We need a team," Bertha declared. They ran to get Tim, who was eager to help, and together they found a wooden board and some rope. Bertha suggested they roll the raspberry onto the board, Frederick and Tim would pull the rope, and she would steer. With teamwork and laughter, they slowly but surely moved the giant raspberry toward Grandpa John's porch. As they reached the steps, Grandpa John clapped. "You've learned the lesson Pip did. Teamwork makes the hardest tasks easier." As they sat enjoying raspberry pie later, Tim asked, "So Pip got help, but what if no one had come?" Grandpa John smiled. "That's the other lesson. Sometimes, we have to know when to ask for help. Struggling alone isn't always a sign of strength, but knowing when to seek support is." Frederick and Bertha nodded, realizing that teamwork and knowing when to ask for help were both important. That day, the adventure of the ant and the giant raspberry became a lesson they would never forget. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Bye!